Good afternoon, everybody. I left my cell phone out to remind you to please put it on whatever you need to in order to not be interrupted. So I have a thing here that says silence. Thank you. If the loudspeaker is too loud, let me know. Today is Wednesday, September 17th, 2025. We are recording from the Massachusetts Statehouse, room 428. This event will be posted on the SCI Boston website for future reference. It's about 1 o'clock. My name is Dr. Eric Ruby. I am the founder of Massachusetts Walks Again. I am on the Commonwealth Spinal Cord Injury Research Advisory Committee, and I am the co-sponsor of Spinal Cord Injury Awareness Day. This is the 22nd year in a row that we have celebrated September as SCI Awareness Month. What is Massachusetts Walks Again? We are a collaboration of Massachusetts rehabilitation facilities, consumer organizations, legislators, scientists, researchers, policymakers, and advocates working toward a common goal to increase awareness and funding for spinal cord injury cure. Specific information about each organization in our network can be found on the website massachusettswalksagain.com. 25 years ago, my son was hit by a car and paralyzed. Those of you who are too familiar with the events surrounding surgery, hospitalization, and rehabilitation, both physical and emotional, know what my experience has been. I founded Massachusetts Walks Again as my attempt to turn crisis into opportunity. I was fortunate enough to have two legislators in Taunton, Representative Jim Fagan and Senator Mark Pacheco, agree to propose a trust fund to the legislature for research. It passed on the first attempt, an almost unheard of phenomenon in Massachusetts. Since 2004, the fund has awarded $6 million to researchers in SCI cure. Today, we celebrate and recognize the efforts of not only the researchers, but the rehabilitation specialists and the families who have been affected by this life-altering event. As your moderator, I will keep us on track as we have a very full program, which needs to accommodate enthusiastic speakers with a significant amount of information. I want to thank the Boston SCI team of Ryan DeRoche, Molly Sebo, Doug Fry, Dave Estrada, Vita Brown, for their efforts in keeping me focused, moving forward, and putting the program together. Metro Catering is responsible for your lunch, and Donna and Tobias and Bob in Senator Brady's office, I need to thank them for making the planning in this room go so smoothly. Across the nation, September is Spinal Cord Injury Awareness Month. Let me begin with a proclamation signed by Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey. We started these proclamations 22 years ago, and I have Charlie Baker's and Deval Patrick's and a very interesting person from Utah signed all of these. I will read it not totally verbatim. Whereas the estimated number of people living with spinal cord injuries in the United States is approximately 294,000, with a range of 250,000 to 368,000. And whereas every year approximately 400 to 950 people sustain a non-fatal spinal cord injury in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, whereas spinal cord injuries can occur as a result of motor vehicle accidents, violence, falls, sports, and occupational injuries, whereas these injuries range from paraplegia to quadriplegia, whereas through public awareness, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts seeks to minimize the devastating effect of SCI. Now, therefore, I, Maura T. Healy, do hereby proclaim the month of September Spinal Cord Injury Awareness Month, and urge all citizens of the Commonwealth to take cognizance of this event and participate fittingly in its observance. Signed, Maura T. Healy, Governor Kim Driscoll, Lieutenant Governor, and William Francis Galvin, Secretary of the Commonwealth. Each year since 2004, and there is a list on each of your tables, those who work and whose life exemplifies service, commitment, and compassion for those with spinal cord injuries receive this award and proclamation. This year's recipient is Senator Michael Brady, who has sponsored our event, and he was responsible for renaming the fund the Thomas P. Kennedy Trust Fund. His efforts also returned the funding to its original amount of almost $1 million a year. He and Senator Pacheco worked together on this. Senator Brady is in a different hearing right now, and Bob Smith from his office, who knew Thomas Kennedy, is going to give us some information about his relationship and the senator and representative who was here in the Statehouse for 30 years in a wheelchair. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ruby. I had the privilege of meeting Dr. Ruby about 30 minutes ago, and I was handed this testimony and volunteered to make some remarks. When I saw the name Tom Kennedy, I smiled. My family grew up with Tom, and we went to St. Patrick's Church in Brockton, and Tom graduated with my brother Dave, and while we ended up at Brockton High, Tom ended up at Cardinal Spellman, and shortly thereafter, feeling a calling, he entered St. John's Seminary to become a priest. And one day he was cleaning out a stained glass window in the church, and he fell out. His life changed, and he did something remarkable under today's standards. He decided to enter public service to serve the public. Wasn't concerned about polling numbers, focus groups. He wanted to help people. He ended up at City Hall as an aide to Mayor Crosby. And he did so well that he got picked up by Congressman Brian Donnelly, and he worked in Washington. About this time, I was a freshman at UMass Amherst, and I had the pleasure of coming home, and my first vote was for Tom Kennedy for City Council. And Tom was a short-term city councilor, and there was an open state representative seat. And he ran in a special election, and he won. And he came to the Statehouse wasn't trying to get on the evening news, wasn't preparing for a run for governor. He ended up on very important conference committees where he was looking out for little people. And I got to see it firsthand. My first job, I had an internship here at the Statehouse, and I got a job as a legislative aide. And Tom had a very interesting way of finding people that needed help. And you'd get the call from Tom, Bob, or sometimes Robert. There is a young man that needs a ride to the Brockton area tonight. He'd like to testify at a local meeting or something. And I said that you would take him. And you couldn't say no to Tom. He was truly an amazing person, and he collected friends everywhere he went. And about 10 years later, he ran for state senate. And once again, he won. In fact, at that stage, nobody wanted to run against Tom. He was that good. And it was a different way of serving the public because it wasn't really about the publicity. It was always for somebody else and wanted someone else to get credit. And he would do little things like send my mother a St. Patrick's Day card. And he was everywhere for everyone. And I don't know how he did it, but he did. And his mom, Mary, was amazing. She made sure that he was ready every day. And then she went off as a very well-known nurse at Brockton Hospital. And along the way, he would try to see were there any young people along the way that perhaps he could help out. And he identified somebody who I met in first grade at B.B. Russell Elementary School by the name of Michael Brady. And Michael ran for school committee, won. A couple years later, ran for city council, and then with Tom Kennedy's push, eventually Michael Brady became the state representative. And by the time Senator Kennedy's health was getting bad, he started to plan and think of what he was going to leave Brockton and what the future was. And he decided that the person that he wanted to replace him was this Michael Brady. I had a great corporate life. I retired, and I'm 62 now, and my health issues are diabetes. So health insurance is very important to me. So I had an opportunity to come back and to help Brockton and do some constituent work for Michael. And I think Tom Kennedy would get a kick out of the fact that today Michael is chair of the Public Service Committee. So he's chairing a hearing right now to do what Tom did. Be a public servant, help the people. So, wonderful people, and I'm very happy to be here to talk about Tom. Thank you, Dr. Rubin.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Bob said right from the beginning, I'm not going to read Senator Brady's testimony. I'm going to talk from my heart. I think that's what you heard. We will now hear from Massachusetts Public Health, Kelley Cunningham and Jeanne Hathaway from the Division of Violence and Injury Prevention in the Massachusetts Department of Public Health and the Bureau of Community Health and Prevention. They have important messages about this year's injuries and this year's funding. I also hope they can shed light on our proposed future grants. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jeanne Hathaway. I'm an epidemiologist at in the Injury Surveillance Program at the Department of Public Health. And I'm going to be talking about the latest spinal cord injury data in spinal cord injuries in Massachusetts based on Massachusetts acute care hospital data. And the most recent year we have is 2023. In the interest of time, I'm going to just focus on the key points from each slide, and if you have questions or would like additional information, please see me or there'll be contact information, myself or Kelley afterwards. Okay, in 2023, there were 427 Massachusetts residents who were treated in the hospital for a new spinal cord injury, a new non-fatal spinal cord injury. In addition, there were 329 people who had a hospital stay for treatment of sequela of a spinal cord injury or other follow-up treatment. The number of active treatments, so that's basically new spinal cord injuries, the dark blue, increased 19% from 2019 to 2023, from 359 to 427 people. For emergency department visits, however, the number of people who were treated for spinal cord injuries just in the emergency department decreased 43% during that time period, from 131 people to 75 people. This slide and the next few slides combine the people who were treated in 2023 for a new non-fatal spinal cord injury, either in the hospital or an emergency department, and that's 492 people. Of those 492 Mass residents, 71% of them sustained a cervical level spinal cord injury. Groups at highest risk, males are at higher risk for spinal cord injury than females, and rates of spinal cord injury increase exponentially with age. In fact, in 2023, around half of the new non-fatal spinal cord injuries were among adults ages 65 and over. Non-Hispanic Black residents have the highest rate of spinal cord injury, followed by white non-Hispanic residents. And this disparity is similar in national data. Unintentional falls are the leading cause of spinal cord injury in Massachusetts, accounting for 57% of new non-fatal spinal cord injuries, followed by motor vehicle crashes, which account for 18% of new non-fatal spinal cord injuries. Delving a little more into the racial disparities in spinal cord injury, we found that Black, non-Hispanic, and Hispanic residents, the average age of people who sustain a spinal cord injury is significantly lower in Black and Hispanic groups compared to white non-Hispanic groups. So the average age for Black and Hispanic of sustaining a spinal cord injury is 46 and 48 compared to 64 for white non-Hispanic people. That may be partly due to the proportion of spinal cord injuries that result from motor vehicle traffic crashes. So this would be as an occupant or pedestrian or motorcyclist. Motor vehicle crashes contribute to 41% of spinal cord injuries in 2023, and our non-Hispanic Black residents but only 12% of these injuries are white, non-Hispanic residents. And finally, looking at hospital charges, which are just a very small fraction of the financial costs associated with spinal cord injury. In 2023, looking at charges, hospital charges for all visits, which include the initial active visits as well as treatment for sequela and follow-up, the total is $108 million. And of course, that does not include rehabilitation costs, outpatient costs, long-term care costs, lost wages, or the immeasurable costs of pain and suffering. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kelley Cunningham to talk about the Thomas P. Kennedy Spinal Cord Injury Trust Fund. Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kelley Cunningham, excuse me, from the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. I'm the director for the Division of Violence and Injury Prevention. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the trust fund that you've been hearing about. And, first, just as a start, I know there's some information in the handout you have with the agenda that actually gives you a breakdown of how much funding we've been able to accrue each year. And I think that's really significant for you to take a look at that. Overall, though, the purpose of this trust fund is to promote treatments to overcome the effects of chronic spinal cord injury. So that is a direct from the legislation, and we have to be really specific about the work that we do. The revenue is generated by a $50 fee to persons seeking to reinstate their driver's license after suspension for multiple moving violations. I have to say, as I was looking at the history of how much funds we've had, when you look at 2020 and 2021, that's where we had our highest peak of the number of infractions that we're able to put into the trust fund. It's really interesting considering that time, right, what was going on then. And then now over the past couple of years, we've been seeing a steady decrease of the amount of funds that are coming in. We had a starting balance in July. We go by fiscal years. July 1st is our fiscal year start, and June 30th is the end of our fiscal year. So for FY25, we had $1.62 million. And in this past fiscal year, we were able to put in another $782,000. All right, so just give you an idea of what we typically get per year that goes into this fund. And then what happens at DPH is we're responsible, based on this statute, to get the funds out for research in spinal cord injury. The last funding cycle ended in that FY25, right before that. And we had to take a break because, quite frankly, we ran out of money in the trust fund. And we had to build it back up. So that's what we've been doing, is building back up that trust fund. Our previous folks received funding from FY20 to FY24. You might even be hearing from some folks in this, but they were all getting, I think it was roughly around $350,000 each per year to be able to do their research work. So what's happening now is we need to do a new procurement to be able to get these funds back out there. And we had hoped to be able to do it in this fiscal year, but we're running into roadblocks. I don't know if many of you have been listening to the news. There's lots going on in public health, and it's causing a lot of strain on our capacity. We actually lost our director for Injury Prevention and Control Program, which is why I'm speaking instead of that person. So it's had a ripple effect on us. So we don't have that capacity to be able to do some of this work that we need to do to get it out to you. What we're hoping to do is that in 2026, the procurement will be posted, which also allows us to be able to build up that trust fund a little bit more. I did bring with me that I want to leave up at the table or even over here while I'm still here for you to fill out. If you're interested in hearing when the new procurement is going out, you can fill this out, and then I'll take this with me and we'll let you know. We always do put it on Combis, so that's another location for you to be able to look, but I know it's a pain in the neck to go through Combis. It's a real pain. We are allowed to send you out the link when we do get this. Some of you may have seen a request for information that was done, I believe, in early summer. So we have some data from folks that completed that help us be able to figure out what we're going to do with the next round of funding. All right, so I wanted to be able to share that from the deepest part of my heart. We want to get this out as soon as we can. Is while we're trying to figure this out at DPH, we want you to know that this is important to us, and we want to make sure that we get this to you. I also want to share, because Jeanne had some great information on there, on the slide deck. Well, here's our contact information if you want to reach out to us directly. But also, if you go to the mass.gov website and search spinal cord injury, it'll bring you to our website that has, we're actually putting this presentation on that. So there will be more information there too for you. All right. So thank you very much, everyone.
So thank you, Kelley and Jeanne. And I want to ask our researchers, please get the information and get on to COMMBUYS so you can put in something for an RFR. Kelley and I have been trying to schedule more meetings so that we can get this moving forward. It was very difficult to hear that we didn't have enough money to do any funding. And that's one of the issues that is very important. And I will talk about that at the end of my speech. But I do want to say that on Wednesday, September 9th at UMass Medical Center in Worcester, Governor Healy announced a $400 million DRIVE initiative, D-R-I-V-E. I looked that up to find out what it stands for, but I couldn't find it. But it's a DRIVE initiative to protect and advance innovative medical research and jobs. And she emphasized the world-class talent in Massachusetts. And this proposal will support a key foundation of the Massachusetts economy, namely healthcare. So again, I would have our researchers reach out to this DRIVE fund, $400 million. Maybe you know more about it than I do. I'm sure Jeffrey Macklis knows much about it. He is right on top of everything. So, I have asked our speakers to say a few words about themselves, their position, and their credentials. Why they are interested in SCI research, their story, what they are researching, and the need for funding, and the future. All in 5 minutes. So that's not going to be very easy. Jeff Macklis was the first recipient of the grants, and he is on the executive committee of the Harvard Stem Cell Institute. His topic initially was growth cone molecular machinery for axon growth versus inhibition versus regeneration in spinal cord injury. Last year, we were very lucky that Mariale came to us and was able to speak. She is able to speak again. She's in the MD Ph.D. program. And according to Jeff, she is driven to change the prospects of SCI. She works collaboratively and individually on both the molecular development of corticospinal neurons and the molecular machinery that blocks or does not enable CNS regeneration in SCI. She is terrific. And when I saw her today, and I am a pediatrician, I certainly hope that she will be able to continue, because she now has a different issue in front of her, which may be quite obvious. Mariale, do you want to come up?
Thank you, Dr. Rui, for that very kind introduction. And good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be here. Thank you. Like Dr. Rui mentioned, my name is Mariale Vicent. I am an MD Ph.D. student in the lab of Jeff Macklis, and many of you know Jeff, and he has been very fortunate over the years to receive funding from the Spinal Cord Injury Fund. I'm completing my dissertation through the program in neuroscience. Will be completing my medical training at Harvard Medical School after I receive my Ph.D. And as a physician scientist in training, I'm a very firm believer in the power of science to advance clinical care and improve clinical outcomes. Through my work in the Macklis lab, I'm intent on harnessing this power that science has to improve the lives of those with spinal cord injuries. In the Macklis lab, we believe that understanding how a system is built is key to understanding how that same system can be rebuilt or repaired. In other words, we study how the central nervous system, the brain, and the spinal cord develop in hopes that what we learn from development can inform how we approach regeneration after traumatic injury, such as spinal cord injury. But of course, I don't study the development and regeneration of the whole brain and spinal cord. What I focus on are corticospinal neurons. These are the neurons, or the cells of the nervous system, that actually connect the brain to the spinal cord to allow us to move voluntarily. It is disruption of these neurons after spinal cord injury that leads to paralysis. And at this point, I want to pause for a second and talk a little bit about the structure of a neuron. Neurons have three basic parts. One, a cell body, which contains the nucleus of the cell. We think of the cell body as the command center of the cell. Two, dendrites. These are akin to antennae. They receive signals from other cells and pass along those messages to the cell body for processing. And three, axons. This is the output structure of neurons, how they in turn communicate and send signals to other cells in the body. Some like to think of axons as cables that connect different computers to each other to allow us to perform specific functions. In the case of the motor system, to enable us to move. In adult humans, these cables can be quite long, with corticospinal neurons having the longest axons, or about 1 meter long from our brains to the furthest points of our spinal cords. It is truly a feat of development that these neurons systematically and reproducibly build our nervous system without getting lost among all the other types of neurons and cells in the brain, which are also simultaneously building their own systems. How do they accomplish this feat? At the center of it all is the growth cone. Growth cones are little structures at the end of growing axons, of these little cables, which sample their environment and guide axonal growth in specific directions. Growth cones respond to the environment by growing toward or away from cues with a high degree of specificity and autonomy from the cell body, the so-called control center of the cell. This is why in the Macklis lab, we care about growth cones and the molecules that are locally and directly responsible for wiring our wonderfully complex nervous system. As I mentioned earlier, we also believe that gaining a deeper understanding of how the central nervous system is built will help us understand how to repair it after injury, especially if we focus on understanding local molecular processes in growth cones. This knowledge will highlight which molecular pathways may be key for sustaining local growth and potentially regrowth. So how do I study growth cones? In the lab, we have developed a set of approaches to isolate these small growth cones and study their molecular contents. Collaboratively with others in the lab, I have collected growth cone samples of corticospinal neurons as they grow through the central nervous system to understand how these neurons grow during normal development. Excitingly, I have also collected growth cone samples of corticospinal neurons after spinal cord injury. For this purpose, I have taken advantage of genetic models of increased regeneration after injury in laboratory animals, which are unfortunately not quite at the translational stage yet. Focusing on regenerating growth cones will allow us to understand the ways in which building the corticospinal system is similar to rebuilding it, and also the ways in which it may need to be different. Hopefully, this work will lead to the discovery of more targeted therapies to increase corticospinal neuron growth after injury. At last year's event, I left you with a quote from Santiago Ramón y Cajal, the father of neuroscience. In the early 1900s, he appealed to the scientists of the future to fix the problem of non-regeneration of the nervous system. I am intent on answering Ramón y Cajal's call, but we are not there yet. Today, I leave you with an appeal of my own. I believe in the power of scientific discovery. It may not always be fast, and we are sure to experience setbacks, but the systematic and rigorous study of biological processes is sure to lead to breakthroughs to improve human lives. We can only accomplish these breakthroughs with appropriate support. In a world where opinion sometimes supersedes scientific fact and otherwise stable funding sources can be taken away, it is paramount that we continue to advocate for continuous support of the scientific enterprise. I will continue to study growth cones of corticospinal neurons, both developing and regenerating, all in the hope that part of what I discover will someday improve the lives of those with spinal cord injury. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Mariale, you do Dr. Macklis well. Our next speaker actually is Justin Brown, who is director of the MGB Paralysis Center. And he's been here a few times. I will say that he is representing Ted Teng. And Ted Teng originally was given a grant for reconstruction for functional repair of chronic SCI. He is not here today, but I will tell you that Justin is going to give us some very interesting information. Thank you.
Kate Rotenberg is going to introduce.
Okay.
And then I have a special guest with us.
Fine. All right. Well, you know, we always have Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C in the spinal cord community. No one knows what the day is going to hold. They just kind of go for it. Come on in.
We had it up before, but we just called the other person up.
We could just yell next and hit the next slide. Does
Yes.
that work? Let's do that.
Person.
That works for me.
So,
While this loads, you don't close it up, you can minimize it.
I'm sorry, next speaker, or
You can call the next speaker while this loads. It's a big document.
Well, I want to say we
we can
have.
actually wing it. We can put that away and wing it.
Yeah, we
Right,
can
yeah,
put it
sure,
outside.
do that.
Yeah,
Just wing
makes
it.
sense. Yeah, I think
This is a more personal venue than the Hall of Flags. It also allows us to be complicated by technology. So I guess we're going back to the personal part. Come on up.
All right, you did say to roll with whatever we got and expect the unexpected in spinal cord injury, so we're going to do exactly that. So my name is Kate Rotenberg, and I'm a researcher at the MGH Paralysis Center with Dr. Brown. And if the slides work, they will, but otherwise not a problem. So in spinal cord injury, we can see a couple of things, if we can make it to slide 2. Above the site of a spinal cord injury, we actually have fairly normal function. You can get a signal from the brain to the spinal cord, out to the muscles, getting some contractions, pretty normal. Below the site of injury, we might have some spasticity, we might have some activity, but you cannot get a signal past that point of injury along the spinal cord to all of those nerves that are being supplied lower down. And then actually at the site of injury, we see something very interesting, which is the damage and degeneration of the lower motor neuron. And that will lead to additional degeneration, decay, and atrophy of the muscle that is supplied by that lower motor neuron, which we will be discussing more and its consequences over time. So if we can make it possibly to the next video, if not completely fine, at the Paralysis Center, we work on a procedure called a nerve transfer surgery. So the idea behind a nerve transfer surgery is we can take a donor nerve, a functioning nerve that can still receive signals from the brain and out to the muscles, and we can rewire it. We can plug it in to a recipient nerve and recipient muscle that are no longer receiving signals. So I think we're going to wing it. It's all good. So what we can see is a patient will have a peripheral nerve or spinal cord injury and lose the ability, for example, to move at the elbow. And in a nerve transfer surgery, we can actually hook up a nerve that, for example, can move a hand that is still functioning and rewire it into that nerve that supplies, for example, the biceps. And with enough time, the axons can grow down that scaffolding and slowly make its way to reinnervate or reinterface with that previously deinnervated and paralyzed muscle. So then, during physical therapy, a patient can think of moving their hand like this, and actually the signals will go down a different route and actually to our muscle of choosing, and they are able to move and flex their elbow. So this is Spinal Cord Injury Awareness Day, not Peripheral Nerve Injury Awareness Day. So what are we doing for that? If you can think about that spinal cord injury that we just discussed, can we take nerves that are supplied by the area that does get signals above the point of injury, and we can hook them up and rewire them to peripheral nerves that are supplied by the spinal cord below the site of injury. And that is exactly what we did with one of our patients. And if you want, you can start coming up. So Macy's here to join us. And let me see if we can get the microphone going. But Macy is an incredible patient who's here to share her story. And if we can pull up a video, that'd be wonderful. But essentially, she came in with a C5 injury and was unable to have a lot of motion below that point of injury, including, for example, which we'll demonstrate, at her triceps. So some of those upper muscles were still functioning and preoperatively required additional assistance in her daily life, and we're going to hear about how we worked on that.
All right. Let me take it. So sometimes patients become friends and keep in touch for a while. So Macy was one of these who the muscles were degenerating. So she came to me from New Orleans, accomplished lady, and she'd done all her homework, and she said, I need to get this done. And we looked at her and said, this needs to be done fast, because we had the ticking clock to degenerate muscles. So we got it done in a hurry. And the video up here shows just no ability to use the arms or hands. She flexed at the elbows, used shoulders, but if lifted the arms up, they swung in to hit her in the face, and we had to strap things to her hands. And then we had the nerve transfer. So I'm going to let you take it from there.
All right, so y'all can hear me? Yeah. Okay, so a little bit about myself. I was involved in politics, prominent attorney in New Orleans. I am a mother of 2 teenagers. When I was first paralyzed, I was in a car accident in February of 2020. We were hit by a semi-RV. My children were in the vehicle with me. I lived in a rehabilitation hospital for 6 months where they told me what Dr. Brown is doing does not exist. Well, what do lawyers do best? We research. And going down the rabbit hole, I found the Paralysis Center, specifically what Dr. Brown was doing, which was what no one else was doing. If anything, it was a hope, a dream, something in the far distant future that maybe we could accomplish in some time, but maybe not in my lifetime. In September of 2020, I made my way to Boston to meet with him, and we recognized it was a time was of the essence issue. I was losing muscle mass and nerves by the minute. Immediately, we scheduled the surgery. I came up in here October of 2020. I've performed multiple surgeries with Dr. Brown. I've been through every nerve transfer, tendon transfer that was on the books. As it stands right now, I am back. I am a practicing attorney. I raise my children. I drive a car. I litigate. I put my makeup on. I do everything that they said that I couldn't do. I went from not being able to feed myself to being able to do all the things that I just told you. When I was in the hospital in Toro in New Orleans, they told my family they should put me in a nursing home, that this would be my life. I am here today to tell you that this is not science fiction. Everything that they said is absolutely true. I am also on the board for a foundation in New Orleans called Split Second Foundation. It's the same thing. I go there, I educate, I let them know that this is a very real concept that we are putting into practice. It is successful. You can have more independence in your life. I also want to kind of circle back to what the previous speaker was talking about, independence, quality of life, and things of that nature. If I see that there are other brethren here today that are paralyzed as well. I think if you would ask a paralyzed person, specifically a quadriplegic, by the way, I am a quadriplegic, I am not a paraplegic, but I can do a lot of things that paras can do. So the reason I'm saying this now is when we are first injured, the first thing that they tell us is this is going to be the rest of our lives, correct? Also, the cure for the wanting to walk again, correct? So that is a concept that a lot of people are like, I want to walk again. If you ask a paralyzed person what they actually want, they want independence. They want to be able to take care of themselves. They're concerned with bowel and bladder, arm and hand function. Dr. Brown and the Paralysis Center are doing that in real time, guys. They are absolutely worthy of your time and consideration. We want to do more than just the individual. We want to bring this back to the masses, people that maybe have a more chronic approach to paralysis. So where we're dealing with things like, for me at that time, it was time is of the essence. What he's doing now is creating longevity. So maybe if you can't get to him in your first year injury, but maybe in your first 5 to 8, they're now doing things which they're going to talk about in a minute that are going to expand this and make it a broader concept so that we can bring it to the masses of Massachusetts.
Perfect. Thank you, Macy. And just so to demonstrate, no triceps previously, and so she had nerves from her shoulders that help her rotate her arm out.
Yeah, right.
And then what can you do with the triceps?
So I can go above my head, I can touch like this, I can punch, I can push. Carpet is not anyone who is paralyzed's friend, so keep that in mind. But I can sit up straight. So I'm sitting up straight, having a conversation with you, holding this microphone. I could be eating at the same time, texting on my phone. All of these things are made possible simply by nerve transfers. I mean, if I could say it in layman's terms, I'm going to say it in 30 seconds. Has anybody ever seen a ceiling fan put in the ceiling? They take it down, you have those coax cables, you have your ground, your neutral, all right? When they splice these nerves, it's a very similar function, where you're taking a live wire and connecting it to a dead wire, where it's going to grow a millimeter a day until it becomes a very functioning nerve. It's not science fiction, it's real.
Perfect. So then the other one was twisting the hand up, became finger opening.
Yeah.
And then on one side, we had to use biceps to get the fingers to close. On the other side, we used wrist extension to get the fingers to close, because different sides, there's a little asymmetry.
So what's tenodesis? This is tenodesis, right? This is me opening my hand. You don't see my wrist moving. That's how you know. This, we do this to grab, right? This, that is full nerve function right there. And the reason why my fingers are curled is because I was told not to stretch them when I was in the hospital. For people who choose to stretch their fingers, you'll have full dexterity and full function, full flexion.
So to try to get back down to our 5-minute limit here. So the next step to this is, as she mentioned, stimulating muscles. We have this long pulse width stimulator that's not FDA approved in the United States. It seems to contract denervated muscles, so we can bring them back to health and then apply these nerve transfers in the late stage, even several years after injury. And number 2 is stimulating the regenerating nerve, which causes it to grow faster, get stronger, more robust results. So those are sort of the next feat for the center. And thank you all for your attention.
Yeah.
Thank you, Macy.
We do have extra time. Each year I ask for suggestions, and the most important suggestion is don't make this an hour. So we're moving into almost the second hour. Here we are. Okay, our third grant recipient was Zhigang from Children's Hospital. His grant was on developing strategies of promoting the anatomical regeneration and functional recovery of reticulospinal axons after spinal cord injury. Jason Biundo was here last year also and spoke, and he is very much aligned with 2 tracks. Investigation, but also on a personal level. Because he is a research assistant in the lab of Zhigang. at Boston Children's, and before joining the lab, his life was forever altered in October of 19 when he suffered a severe T12 spinal cord injury as a result of rock climbing accidents. He has since transitioned his research interest to SCI and is a strong advocate for the SCI community. He has used his personal experience to provide recommendations for research and is involved in many projects relating to SCI in the lab. Jason, take over. Yep. Give you, which one would you like? Hello? That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Ruby. Yeah, I was here about 2 years ago when I was still a research assistant with Dr. He, but now I've moved into being a Ph.D. student at Harvard Medical School, and I'm starting my second year now. Like Dr. Ruby mentioned, I went to UMass Amherst for undergrad, and I studied neuroscience and biology. And in my junior year, I had a spinal cord injury as a result of a rock climbing accident, and that immediately changed my focus everywhere in life, but especially my research interests. And I used my neuroscience background to start doing spinal cord injury research, and I was able to start working with Zhigang. And I've also been working with another amazing organization called Unite to Fight Paralysis to advocate for people with spinal cord injury to be involved in the research process. Like our previous speaker can provide a great example, like being involved in the research process, you have so many insights that you can provide and be a value to the research team, whether or not you have a science background or not. And so I think that's really important, and if you're looking to get involved with that, please let me know, and I can connect you with some great resources. But yeah, so I started my PhD at Harvard Medical School, and I have a really unique opportunity because not many people have a spinal cord injury but also have research experience. So I can use my own personal experience every day in the lab, and people are constantly asking me questions related to the injury and how we can make our research more relevant. So what Zhigang's lab is known for is axon regeneration. He found about 15 years ago that deletion of this gene promotes axon regeneration. And to date, this is still like one of the most promising strategies for promoting axon regeneration. The only problem is the gene P10 is also a cancer tumor suppressor. So it's unable to be translated to the clinic. So now we're kind of going back to the drawing board and trying to figure out new approaches. So one of the ways is finding other ways to promote regeneration. Another way is trying to reduce the scar that forms after an injury. So after an injury, there's not only the primary physical insult to the spinal cord injury, there's also a lot of secondary damage that happens, a lot of inflammation and other things that eventually prevent any sort of nerve regrowth from happening. And so we want to figure out why that happens, is it beneficial at all to have a scar, and how we can figure out a way to either prevent it from forming at all or reduce it in the chronic phase. Other avenues in the lab are trying to promote the function of whatever spared connections we have. So one big paper that he had a few years ago was related to KCC2, which improves the excitability of neurons and makes them more active. Or another one is promoting myelination to also improve the conduction of existing nerve fibers. I'm more interested in the second thing I mentioned, the scar formation, and that's what I'm going to be working on in my PhD. And so in 2020, Zhigang had a big paper that found that neonatal mice, so baby mice, if you have a spinal cord injury in a neonatal mouse, they do not form the scar after injury as opposed to adults. And so if we could try to find a way to see what is different in the adults and how we can make the adults heal that way, that could be a great opportunity. And in my PhD, I'm also co-mentored by Dr. Beth Stevens, who is one of the leading experts in neuroimmunology and Alzheimer's disease. So I'm trying to bring some interdisciplinary approaches to tackle this subject. And it's going to be working on for the next few years. Another thing that I've been working on in the lab, this is what I talked about last time I was here, is I built this system to use AI and machine learning to automatically track mice while they're moving, and so we can get an unbiased approach to study like how well the mice are recovering from spinal cord injury in the movement sense. And so we've used this to test a wide variety of potential drug targets, and for example, these growth factors NT3 and GDNF have already been shown to improve functional recovery after spinal cord injury, and we're going to keep using that to test more targets. And so I just want to use my last minutes I know we're already running behind, to talk about the importance of this funding and improving the state of funding in spinal cord injury. This trust fund is amazing, but Massachusetts has so much potential to be a leader in spinal cord injury research, and we are, but we could be so much better. And we have some of the top research institutions in the country. We have the top hospitals. We have pharmaceutical companies. So if we can find a way to work together, and we can really push this forward, and we really need more funding to make this happen. We need more younger people to be involved in spinal cord injury research, more younger researchers. We need more people with spinal cord injury to be involved in the process. So if you're interested in getting involved and advocating for this, please reach out to me, Dave Estrada, or Dr. Ruby here, and we can hopefully push this forward. So if I have to, I will also be the lab rat to test everything out. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think he really should run for political office, because then we know we've got somebody right there speaking for us. Andrew Reisner also received a grant, and his expertise, he practices at MGH and specializes in informatics, physiologic monitoring, and circulatory shock. His grant topic was pilot testing of systems for tight blood pressure control after acute SCI. Andrew, do you want to come up and talk? Right behind me. There you are. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right.
Does not look like his picture anymore.
Ouch.
Except for the glasses.
We are working on the problem of blood pressure management acutely after spinal cord injury. And the underlying problem is that the nerves that regulate blood pressure can be injured. And when you get low blood pressure, you get poor blood flow and you get poor healing. And not getting the proper management can make a tenfold difference in functional recovery. And the unfortunate truth is that clinicians are not doing a great job at managing it. And we've looked at this in multiple hospitals, in multiple ICUs. And this is not because people are, don't want to do better. It's because it's actually a hard thing. It's like trying to steer a boat where the currents are always moving. So for blood pressure management, you don't want it too high or too low, so you're often trying to titrate. And it's a moving target, and it's not an easy task. However, as we know, this type of task is perfect for today's technology. So there are, AI, machine learning models that can be developed, and we've done this, and developed predictive analytics that can really take a look. And this is what we've been funded to do by Massachusetts. And you can't just go ahead and take a predictive algorithm. You actually have to build an entire application, which is what we've done. And it's got to be safe for use, and it's got to be easy, and it's got to be, clinicians are very, very busy people. It has to be easy and intuitive, and you have to meet cybersecurity regulations. And so, funded by Massachusetts, our small group, and Jeremy Pepino in the back there led this. We did this. We created a software system, and our small group got a FDA IDE, which is called an Investigational Device Exemption, and we've tested this at Mass General, and it did extremely well, candidly. We started off right when COVID hit. So Jeremy joined our group, and the ICUs were flooded with COVID patients, and Jeremy, you're probably wondering, what am I doing here? And Jeremy had a mask, and the ICUs were filled with COVID patients, and that's where we started our trial, and we completed it. And the fact is and this is just because this is really a great problem for technology. The blood pressure that cannot be predicted is just rare. It happens, so sudden things can happen out of the blue. But for instance, in our clinical trial, we predicted 100% of our endpoints This is really something where we think that using today's technology, this should be the standard of care. We've got a system, we actually improved it thanks to the trial work that we were able to do, again, supported by Massachusetts. We received a couple awards at the Neurocritical Care Society meeting, and now we think that we are 1 2-year clinical trial away from this being the standard of care. So we think this is ready. We've shown that it can work. We now need to do a trial to show that it actually improves management. And we have done all the FDA paperwork, and it's all ready to go. And this is all thanks to the support, Dr. Ruby, of your program and the legislators. So I'd like to thank a lot of folks who got us to this place. The Mass DPH has been fantastic, so thanks to those, thanks to the legislators. As we've worked through our project, we've had some lived experience consultants who are in the room here today, and I'd like to thank you folks who've helped us along the way. And a special call out to O.B. Harrington, who I think has passed, but was very, very helpful. And Jeremy and our whole team, thanks to you guys. So really appreciate this. We are very close to doing something after 2 years of validating it. This would be ready to be used for all patients everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Kelley, I hope you're listening to all of this very carefully, because we want to get going. Okay. All right. Christopher Gabel, Ph.D., is Associate Professor at the Department of Physiology and Biophysics, Photonics Center, Boston University School of Medicine. His grant topic was modulation of cellular metabolism to maximize neuronal regeneration. Take it away.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Dr. Ruby, everybody else for putting this together today. And thanks for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about work that I've been doing in my lab. So we're back on the basic biology side of things. How do you get a neuron that's damaged, you've cut this long axon, it needs to regrow, regenerate, and repair itself. Somehow you've got to reconnect everything. And so you've got to entice these neurons to reconnect and become functional again. So why are we looking here at a microscopic worm, right? That's the simplest system in which you can do regeneration experiments, basically. These are, they only have 302 neurons. We can use a laser to go in and cut individual axon and watch in vivo, in the animal itself, single neurons regenerating. And the idea being, in this very simple organism, we can then dissect the biology, cell biology of nerve regeneration. What genes are involved, what cellular processes are involved, and how we can manipulate that to enhance regeneration in the worm, and then that translates up to mammals and into the clinic. So this is work that's been funded by Massachusetts Fund, Dilip Yadav and Dan Taub, who's actually in the back here, are the two researchers that have been doing a lot of this work. Can I advance? Yes. So here's just a couple of our recent studies. This is work done, initiated by Dan, and it's looking at a specific gene, this OGT GLICNAC signaling gene, that increased regeneration by about 75% in our system, in our experiments. And he linked that to the cell metabolism, the ability of the cell to produce energy, ATP. And so you can imagine if you have a big long axon, now you cut the axon, you've got to grow it back again. That's a hugely energetically demanding task to recreate this long connection. And so the energy production in the cell becomes hugely important and can be rate limiting. So this is our initial study sort of identifying that as a problem, and then we went further and had a more recent study really dissecting that. And what metabolic processes are involved in nerve regeneration, and how can you augment them to increase it, to give the cell more energy so it can grow back more efficiently. And you can see it's hugely complex, right? These metabolic pathways are hugely complex, but it also highlights the power of our C. elegans, our little nematode worm, is we can go through and test each one of these genes very rapidly. We can supplement with various nutrients, and dissect these complicated biological pathways very efficiently and rapidly in a worm, and then you take our findings and then translate it up the tree to higher organisms. So more recently, we're still looking at this same metabolic signaling, this OGT signaling that we started out with, but we are now looking at the level of genetics and what genes might it be controlling in a damaged neuron. So is it certain genes are turning on, certain genes are turning off. And so our latest and greatest finding here is this SYN3 mutant that's got a 200% increase in regeneration. And so this gene, along with the OGT signaling, is controlling expression levels of a whole slew of other genes, downstream genes. And so now in the worm, we can go in and figure out which genes are being altered, what do they do, what are the cellular processes involved, and really dissect out this process. And what we think we're looking at here is our key regulatory pathway that's controlling gene expression to promote regeneration, is what we're getting at. And of course, it's all well and good in a microscopic worm, but what does it mean for humans? And so actually Zhigang He's lab, in one of their recent studies, showed that these same genes were increasing regeneration in mice, in mammals. So we've got a conserved process. And so we're super excited to sort of dive into this and dissect it as best we can. So with that, I want to thank Massachusetts once again and CSI Boston for putting this all together and really driving the funding. And as we've heard, as things get, are fluctuating on the federal level, the funding at the state level becomes absolutely essential. We wouldn't be able to do this work without the funding we've received, and we can't thank you enough. No.
Thank you, Chris. We're going to take a little tour here. Senator Brady is available to speak, and I think it would be to our advantage to recognize him for the work he has done and the support he has given us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ruby, and welcome everyone. This is the Statehouse, is the people's house. It's not our house as elected officials, it's the public's house, and I'm honored to be here. And I know my one of my legislative aides spoke about Tom Kennedy, who suffered a severe spinal injury. He was going into the archdiocese and he was cleaning a window. He was going to become a priest, and he fell out the window, and he was paralyzed from the chest down. And thank God his mother was a nurse. So she helped him get going, and I got a funny story on this too. He was old enough to buy beers, so he had a cousin who was not old enough, and they had a big Le Mans, and with the old big doors, so they were able to put a slider to get Tommy Kennedy in the front seat of the car, so his cousin would take him out and they'd buy a case of beer, and that kept him motivated too. But in the real thing though, he always wanted to give back, and he was a aide to City Hall mayors in the past. He ran for city council, which later I served in Ward 2 in Brockton. He was like an older brother mentor to me. He always reminded me when my tie was not straight and my haircut which I need a haircut every other day, as you know. But he served the public in great efforts. And to his credit, he not only was a city council, state representative, but a state senator, but he also went back to school. And it's difficult, and as we get older, I come from humble means. I worked at a bakery in Brockton, went to Massey Community College, later on went back to school, got in the insurance business, and I worked for MetLife and started my own business, and then I had the crazy notion up for public office. But he went back to school with his disability. He never let anything stop him. He went and graduated from Massey Community College, went on to Stonehill College, and then graduated from Harvard. And we worried because we were worried he was pushing himself too much because, you're struggling, you got to do your job here, and you got to take care of your own health. And but he had a great family and a great support and great resources. And as I mentioned, he was a great mentor to me. And I'm just honored to be a part of the Statehouse here and part of the Public Service Committee. I had a hearing today, so I'll start up with that. I chair Public Service, but also to follow in hopefully his footsteps and many other people that we have become very close to, and there's many that suffer from disabilities. My mother was in a wheelchair at the end of her life. She didn't have a spinal injury, but because of circulation issues and so forth, her legs were amputated. And then there's another gentleman, Jim McLaughlin, who, when I first ran for office, he was an attorney for the city of Brockton, and he was in my district when I first ran for office. And I remember knocking on doors running for office, and I went up the ramp to his house, and it reminded me of my mother when she was in the wheelchair, and Tommy Kennedy. And his door wasn't locked. It was a different world back in those days. And he gave me my first donation to my campaign, and his daughter became not only a state rep, but an ambassador to Ireland, and a young lady from Brockton, Massachusetts. So I have great mentors and great friends who have supported me over the years, and any help moving forward, please don't hesitate to contact us, because that's what we do in public service. We work on the public's behalf. So thank you, Dr. Ruby, and thank you all for coming to the Statehouse again. You're always welcome in the Statehouse in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. God bless you.
So we did have an agenda, as all the people here had an agenda, and we need to be flexible. But there is a kind of a method to my madness, how I put the agenda together. We heard the data, the hard data of the numbers who were injured, the hard data of our funding, and then we went to the scientific part of it. And now the third part will be rehabilitation, because that is the practical part of what's going on. So Dr. Slocum is here today. She is the Director of Health Policy at Spaulding Rehab Hospital. Dr. Slocum, can you come up? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ruby. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's really amazing to sort of hear everyone's science, everyone's stories. And I am a spinal cord injury physician by training. I'm a physiatrist, or a physical medicine and rehabilitation doctor. And I wanted to start a little bit about my why and why I got into that field, because I think it resonates with many of much of what's been shared today. So when I was in medical school way back when, I liked everything. I liked pediatrics. I liked surgery. I liked obstetrics. Nobody in my family was from medicine, and so I went into it, and it was like I liked everything in the candy shop. I couldn't narrow it down. And so I was thinking, I was sort of between, like, what should I do? Neurology was really attractive because, as Dr. Brown knows, it's very cerebral, and you're localizing the lesion, and you're looking at how things are connected and wired together. And then I did an elective in spinal cord injury rehabilitation. And I loved it. And something that one of my mentors said to me really stuck with me. And she said, the people that we serve are often sort of seen by larger society in terms of what they can't do. And she said, our job in rehabilitation is really to see what's possible, and to see beyond what everybody else thinks is possible, and then to make that happen. And I loved it because it was all about getting people back to the community. It wasn't about like micro-titrating something, which is really important, of course, in the ICU, as we know. But it was all about sort of getting people back to what they love doing. And that could be sports, that could be, being a mom or a grandmother, that could be a job, that could be sort of anything that they imagined outside the four walls of the hospital. So with that in mind, I'm going to tell everybody there will be approximately 18,000 new traumatic spinal cord injuries in the U.S. this year. And we have over 500,000 Americans that currently live with paralysis due to traumatic spinal cord injury, and over 5 million Americans that are living with paralysis from other causes. Could be stroke, could be multiple sclerosis, but that means sort of they have difficulty or they're not able to move their upper or their lower extremities. This is between 1% and 2% of the entire U.S. population, and improved life expectancies over the last 2 to 3 decades due to advances in resuscitation, surgical techniques, and medical technologies, means that people with spinal cord injuries are living longer, and the overall prevalence has increased, yet we still lag in certain measures in the US in terms of getting people back to full employment, meaningful access to community programs that allow individuals with spinal cord injuries to thrive and to participate fully. It's never been more important to fund spinal cord injury research. In addition to supporting researchers who characterize the cellular mechanisms of injury and pioneer novel therapies and surgical approaches to repair and reconstruction, it's also vital to support research that examines long-term health and function for survivors of spinal cord injury, and the supports that enable those living with spinal cord injuries to return to work, employment, and meaningful community engagement. I would argue that there are few places on the planet that have our great fortune and our density of biotechnology experience, expertise, and resources. And Massachusetts is a forerunner at providing access to health insurance coverage. We can still learn, we can still cross disciplines. We have much to learn from each other, even though we're all gathered and we have this density of experience in one place. We can also learn from other states about successful blueprints and frameworks for guaranteeing access to essential services, technologies, and care coordination for those with spinal cord injury, so that the multi-system physiologic effects of spinal cord injury can be successfully managed in communities where patients live, learn, work, play, and age. In my clinical practice as a physiatrist and as a spinal cord injury specialist, I frequently work with patients and caregivers who have encountered barriers to routine preventive services, durable medical equipment, and assistive technologies that can result in delayed diagnoses, avoidable complications, and really needless social isolation for those living with spinal cord injury and their loved ones and caregivers. While spinal cord injury is often a catastrophic medical event that affects many body systems, long-term management and complications is really straightforward and well supported by a wealth of evidence that we have, supported by entities like the Paralyzed Veterans of America and the Spinal Cord Injury Consortium, as long as we and as long as consumers and patients have the right tools, the right equipment, and the right knowledge. We owe it to our family members, our friends, and our colleagues in Massachusetts to build on our resources as a biotechnology hub and a health policy incubator to really cultivate and launch new technologies and systems of care that enhance spinal cord injury recovery and ensure that the dignity and really the optimal health of every individual living with a spinal cord injury that resides within our state as they grow and they age. We can truly be a beacon and a model of care for individuals with spinal cord injury for other states in New England and the US as our medical and our translational research teams work on cures and ways to restore full function following the injury. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are coming full circle because David Estrada will be our next speaker. I met David over 25 years ago when we testified together with Travis Roy to get this fund on the books. Our original speaker was Matthew Kloss, who was the research coordinator at Spaulding, but again, because of Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C, he is not here. So David will give you a speech as a program manager at Spaulding Rehab Hospital. I still feel that David should be running for Boston City Council, which he did a long time ago, but I think that having a family and other issues came first. As a pediatrician, family first, but spinal cord injury is up there too. David, you can have this. Okay, and here you go with this one. Okay. Okay, Ryan, how are we doing on that?
Great. All right. Testing. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Dr. Ruby. As he mentioned, we worked together to get this legislation passed in 2004. It was actually relatively easy to get it passed. And then we ran into a few roadblocks along the way. Half of the money wound up in the general fund. And we kind of fought for about a decade, and as was mentioned earlier, Senator Kennedy unfortunately passed away, and the money was transferred back into the trust fund. The rest of the money was named after the good senator, and here we are today. So the message that I want to give is, as a person who's been living with a spinal cord injury for the past 30 years, is it's been a long road, and I can remember, I think it was a few months, I was injured, went to Boston Medical Center for rehab for 3 months, which was just basically an adequate amount of time for me to kind of start wrapping my head around what happened to me physically and mentally. And so after that, I went back to Northeastern University. I was a senior, and I wound up meeting another gentleman who had a spinal cord injury 5 years prior to me, and he kind of showed me the ropes. And one night, his dad picked us up and brought us down the street to Brigham Women's Hospital, and we attended a symposium on spinal cord injury research. And there was a gentleman from, I believe, from Europe. I think it was either Denmark or somewhere else. But anyway, he was Switzerland. Thank you, Dr. Brown. He was talking about Schwann cells, and this was, again, 30 years ago. And, you know, a lot of us here in this room have heard the old adage, don't worry, you'll be walking again in 5 years. Research, you know, there's a ton of research going on, and, you know, it's going to happen. You'll walk again. So 30 years later, I'm here to say that that old adage is bullshit. But we have come a long way. I've been involved in the community for 30 years, and I've seen the trajectory increase towards, you know, different modalities, different methods of helping us, you know, more with secondary complications that we face, but also the great work that Dr. Brown and others are doing with tendon and nerve transfers. So I have a lot of hope that, you know, someday we'll have something that will help us greatly. We may not be walking and running, but something that'll help, and it is happening, I think, today. I also just want to thank the state reps and senators and aides that showed up here today. As Dr. Ruby mentioned, I ran for office, I think it was in 2001, so it's over 20 years ago. And man, I can't tell you how much work it is. I tried to knock on doors, but I obviously couldn't get up steps, so I had other people knock on doors for me. It's not an easy task, and you know, I did it for the simple fact that I wanted to help people. And so I encourage everyone in this room to, if you haven't already, contact your state rep or state legislator, contact your federal legislators, and just tell them who you are, tell them your story. And it's easy now. You don't have to pick up the phone. You can send an email to them, and they almost always respond. And the other thing is that we do need more money to do the research, to get the research done. There are other states that do get a lot more money than we do here in Massachusetts, and every state has a mechanism for a trust fund that's, I'm sorry, not every state, but the states that do have SCI trust fund bills have different mechanisms. You know, ours happens to be a reinstatement of a license, but you know, I know Dr. Ruby's had some good ideas on how to get more funding over the years, and we need to do that. So I'll just end with a big thank you to Dr. Ruby, who actually is responsible for us all being here today. The money, the bill, the perseverance over the past 20 plus years since the bill's been passed. Dr. Ruby, I love you, we love you. Thank you from the bottom of our heart to what you've done. We appreciate it so much.
Thanks, David. I love you too. Thank you, David. This will be the shortest speech because it's concise, tells you what it is. Spinal Cord Injury Awareness Day is about awareness, sharing information, resources, networking, partnership, and collaboration. The traits in common of our Proclamation recipients, researchers, and the paralyzed are creativity, innovation, persistence, passion, purpose, and courage. However, in order to fund research to a cure, we need to turn the personal into the political. My relationship with my state senator and representative is the example. Our stories can convince the legislature. Massachusetts SCI research funding is significantly lower than other states, New York and New Jersey in particular. We need to do better. Looking at the DPH data, it is not unreasonable to suggest fees on new construction, taxes on guns and ammunition, and surcharges on motorcycle registrations. Piggybacking on the Head Injury Trust Fund might be the easiest but least popular. In our quest for a cure, we have gone from impossible to improbable to inevitable. Hope is our attitude, research is our strategy, funding makes it happen. If we can put a man on the moon, we should be able to cure spinal cord injury paralysis. Thank you to all the speakers and attendees who have shared your time, knowledge, and interest with us today. The take-home message, not if, but when. Thank you. Questions?
Dr. Ruby, if I just may also, I want to thank and introduce my staff. I know you heard from my good friend Bob Smith, who we grew up in the same neighborhood, and he still talks to me to the place I come from. And my new chief of staff, Tobias Collins. But this room would not be possible to be opened up because there's a lot of groups working every day to try to get access to rooms here. And Donna LeConte, who's been with me for many years, did a yeoman's work to get this.
Okay, we can take photos, we can take questions, we can take some more food, please. And thank you all for the support you have given me. That's what keeps me going too. So, see you next year.